The wisdom of the ancients often seems distant and irrelevant, lost in the dust of centuries, but sometimes, through the millennia, ideas reach us that amaze us with their amazing applicability to our modern lives. This is precisely the philosophy of Sun Tzu, the legendary Chinese strategist and author of one of the greatest military treatises of all time, The Art of War. Written more than 2,500 years ago, this book would seem to be devoted exclusively to battles and generals. However, its true value lies in its universal principles that are applicable not only on the battlefield, but also in everyday struggles for success, well-being, and personal development. Sun Tzu is a figure shrouded in mystery. Little is known about his life, and some historians even doubt that he ever existed. But whoever he was, his legacy is undeniable. The Art of War is more than just a set of tactical instructions. It is a profound philosophical discourse on strategy, psychology, resource management, and, most importantly, understanding human nature. Every aspect of his teachings, from the importance of self-knowledge to the art of deception and speed of action, resonates with the challenges we face today, in business, in our careers, in our relationships, and even in confronting our own weaknesses. Today, I suggest you consider Sun Tzu's 6 key rules for life that, despite their ancient origins, remain incredibly effective today. We'll see how these principles can become your reliable compass in a world full of uncertainty and competition, helping you make wise decisions, avoid unnecessary conflicts, and achieve your goals with greater ease and confidence. So get ready to see how ancient military wisdom can transform your modern life. And we will start with the first rule, which says that you need to know yourself and your enemy. If Sun Tzu left us with only one rule, it would probably be the most important and comprehensive. In his treatise, he stated, "If you know yourself and your enemy, you will not be afraid of 1,000 battles. If you know yourself but not your enemy, you will win once and lose once. If you do not know yourself or your enemy, every battle will end in defeat for you." This short but incredibly capacious phrase is the cornerstone of any successful strategy, be it a military campaign, a complex business project, building personal relationships, or striving for self-improvement. The principle states, awareness is strength, and lack of information is the shortest path to failure. But you are probably wondering, what did Sun Tzu really mean by knowing yourself? It is not just a list of strengths and weaknesses, it is a comprehensive and honest self-analysis, covering all aspects of your resources, opportunities, and limitations. And the first is, of course, resources and potential, your financial assets, physical property, access to technology. In the context of Sun Tzu's army, these were food supplies, equipment, weapons. For a modern person, this could be startup capital for a business, access to the internet, and modern gadgets for work. Having a house or a car that makes everyday life easier are also taken into account. It is important to understand what you are really strong in and what you lack competence in. This also includes understanding your team, if you work in a team, the strengths of each employee, their motivation, their ability to collaborate, and of course, your ability to effectively manage time, your productivity at different times of the day, how much time you can devote to a particular task without burning out. It is also worth paying attention to the strengths and weaknesses, a kind of internal SWOT analysis. Strengths. These are your competitive advantages. What do you do better than others? Where do you have unique knowledge or skills? What is your natural inclination? These are what you should rely on. Weaknesses. These are your vulnerabilities. What are you lacking? Where might you run into difficulties? These are things that you either need to improve, compensate for, or avoid situations where these weaknesses become critical. For example, your strength is creative thinking, but your weakness is systematicity and attention to detail. Knowing this, you can either take courses on time management and organization, or find a partner or colleague who will compensate for your weakness by taking on routine tasks. And of course, goals and values are essential to know. What do you really want to achieve? What are your long-term ambitions? It is very important to distinguish your true desires from those imposed by society or other people's expectations. But the adversary in the context of Sun Tzu is not always a human enemy. This can be any external force, circumstance, or challenge that stands in the way of your goal. To know the enemy means to collect the most complete and accurate information about him and about the external environment. It is necessary to conduct an analysis of the enemy. For example, strengths and weaknesses of the enemy. What are its advantages? Where is it vulnerable? What resources, financial, technological, human, does it have? This allows you to understand where you can strike or take advantage and where you should avoid. It is also important to consider the goals and motivation of the opponent. Namely, what drives your opponent, competitor? What does he want to achieve? What are his priorities? Understanding motivation allows you to predict his further actions. It is necessary to conduct an analysis of the external environment, opportunities and threats. What's hot now? What's going out of date? Where is the market heading? What new technologies could impact your industry? Inflation, exchange rates, economic growth or recession. In fact, Sun Tzu's wisdom has been demonstrated in many historical events. For example, the Battle of Cannae. Although he was no Sun Tzu, Hannibal, the great Carthaginian general, applied this principle to perfection. He had thoroughly studied the Roman army's tactics. Their strength was frontal assault and numbers, and the terrain. By knowing his relatively smaller forces, he knew himself. Then he knew the enemy. The Romans, their overconfidence and predictability. Hannibal formed his army in a crescent, deliberately weakening the center to bait the Romans. When the Romans advanced on the center, he allowed them to break through, and then his flanks encircled them. This resulted in one of the greatest tactical defeats in history, where a smaller army destroyed a much larger one. Hannibal knew his own and the enemy's capabilities. I want to say that the principle of know yourself and know your enemy permeates all areas of our life, remaining incredibly relevant and detailed. For example, in business. Let's imagine a young company and, before launching a product, it must conduct a deep market analysis. Who is the target audience? What are its needs? Who is already offering similar solutions, competitors? What are their strengths and weaknesses? At the same time, founders must honestly assess their own competencies, financial capabilities, and ability to withstand competition. For example, many successful IT companies started with niche products, clearly understanding their limited resources, know yourself, and only then scaled up, gradually winning market share from larger players, knowing their sluggishness. It is also very important in your career, because before the interview, you not only evaluate your skills and experience, what can I offer, but also carefully study the company, its culture, products, news, interviewer profile, and the vacancy itself. What are the key requirements? What do they value? This allows you to know the enemy, that is, the employer, and prepare answers that will highlight your strengths and compliance with their needs. And of course, if you want to grow in your profession, you need to understand your gaps in knowledge weaknesses and what skills will be in demand in the future labor market trends. Enemy. This helps to choose the right courses, certifications, or projects for development. It is also important in personal relationships, for example. If a conflict arises, it is important not only to express your feelings and needs, know yourself, but also to try to understand the other person's point of view, his motives, his pains, know the enemy. Only then is it possible to find a compromise or a solution that will satisfy both parties. Also, in personal development. Before setting a goal, for example, to run a marathon, you must honestly assess your physical fitness, the time you can devote to training. Know yourself. Then you study the opponent, the marathon itself, its distance, the features of the route, the necessary training programs, possible risks. Know the situation. But you have a question. How to apply this rule in everyday life in practice? And I will tell you that you can write down your thoughts, feelings, successes, failures every day or week. What caused you stress? What brought you joy? Where did you feel strong and where vulnerable? This will help to identify patterns of behavior and emotional reactions. And before making an important decision, a purchase, an investment, a change of job, starting a project, take the time to collect information. Use the internet, read books, industry reports, talk to experts. The more data, the more informed your decision will be. It can also help in development and empathy. You need actively listen to others. Try to put yourself in their place. This will not only improve your relationships, but will also give you invaluable knowledge about the enemy, his needs, fears, motives. The world is constantly changing and we change with it. Therefore, the process of knowing yourself and the world around you should be continuous. Regularly review your assessments, update information, be ready to adapt. We have learned that the know thyself and know thy enemy principle is not a one-time task, but a continuous process of self-improvement and world learning. This is its true power and eternal relevance. It allows us to be not just participants in events, but their architects, making decisions based on a deep understanding of all variables. Therefore, if you can do something, show the enemy that you cannot. If you use something, show him that you do not use it. Although close, show that you are far away. Although far away, show that you are close. Lure him with advantage, upset him and take. If he has everything, be ready. If he is strong, dodge. Having aroused his anger, upset him. Having assumed a modest appearance, arouse his conceit. If his forces are fresh, tire him. If he is friendly, disunite. Attack what he is not ready for, move when he does not expect it. At first glance, these words may seem shocking and like a call to dishonesty, treachery, or even immorality. However, Sun Tzu is not talking about outright lying for the sake of lying or malicious fraud, but about the strategic use of cunning, disguise, surprise, and psychological influence. This is the art of creating false impressions, distracting attention, hiding true intentions, and using the element of surprise. The main goal of such deception is to achieve victory with minimal losses, avoiding direct head-on confrontation if possible, and using resources as efficiently as possible by forcing the enemy to make mistakes. The essence of this principle is to manipulate the opponent's perception. If he is convinced of your weakness, he will relax and become careless. If he is convinced that you will act according to a predictable scenario, he can be caught off guard by choosing a completely different tactic. It is about being less obvious, not revealing all your cards, forcing the opponent to play by your rules even if he does not realize it, and exploiting his delusions or prejudices to the maximum. In this sense, deception is more the art of strategic mind games than an act of dishonesty. Sun Tzu's principle of deception is deeply rooted in the understanding of human psychology and tactics, such as showing weakness when you are strong and strength when you are weak. If you have an overwhelming advantage, you can feign vulnerability to lure your opponent into a trap. Conversely, when you are really weak, feigning confidence and determination can deter your opponent from attacking. Also, creating decoys that distract your opponent from your true goal or force him to take actions that are disadvantageous to you, are throwing in false information or creating a situation that leads the enemy in the wrong direction. For example, a company developing a breakthrough technology may deliberately leak rumors about working on another, less significant project in order to distract competitors from its real innovation. And the main advantage of deception is its ability to deprive the enemy of time to prepare and react. Unpredictability undermines his morale and disorients him. Also, the principle of the art of deception has many manifestations in the modern world, especially in competitive environments, and is not always associated with unethical behavior. For example, in business and marketing. Before a new product is launched, companies often launch short commercials or posts that create intrigue without revealing all the details. The goal is to arouse curiosity and create excitement, making consumers anticipate the product's release. This is deception in the sense of understatement and attention management, and small companies with limited budgets can use creative, unexpected, and unconventional approaches to promotion, creating the impression of much greater fame or influence than they actually have. This is a trick of perception, but it can also help in a career and self-presentation. When looking for a job or moving up the career ladder, a person does not always tell the whole truth about every failure. He packages his experience and skills so that they look as advantageous as possible for a specific vacancy or project. This is not a lie, but a strategic focus on strengths and the ability to sell yourself in the best possible way. In public speaking or building a personal brand, people often project a certain image that may not fully match their everyday behavior. This is cheating in the sense of managing perceptions to gain trust or admiration. Sometimes, in a new team or position, it is useful not to show off all your abilities at once, but to play dumb or be an attentive listener. This allows you to better understand the team dynamics, assess the strengths and weaknesses of others, And then, when the moment is right, show off your leadership skills and surprise everyone. But how? How can we use the art of deception constructively and ethically in everyday life, without going over the line of manipulation and without losing trust? To begin with, develop strategic thinking and observation skills. Learn to analyze information, human behavior, market trends. What is not said out loud? What true motives may lie behind this or that action? Try to anticipate how the adversary, competitor, negotiating partner, will react to your actions. This will help you stay one step ahead. Also, be flexible and unpredictable. Sometimes it is useful to change your routine or approach to tasks so as not to be too predictable. This applies to both business strategies and personal behavior, and don't reveal all your ideas or plans at once. Sometimes it is useful to maintain some intrigue or understatement in order to maintain an advantage. But if you don't want to reveal your true intentions, you can talk about something else, something less important, but don't lie. Switch your attention. In case of criticism or a difficult question, you can rephrase the question or answer another part of it that is more beneficial to you, without giving a direct answer. Also, do not forget to develop emotional intelligence and acting skills, because the ability to control your emotions and express them in a way that suits you, such as staying calm under pressure even if there is a storm raging inside, or showing confidence when you are nervous, is a powerful tool. And of course, practice creating the right impression depending on the situation. For example, for an interview you need one image, for a meeting with friends, another. But it is important to remember that Sun Tzu's art of deception does not call for malicious fraud or breach of trust. It calls for intellectual flexibility, creativity, insight, and strategic thinking that allow one to achieve one's goals in the most efficient, least costly, and least conflictual way, using psychological advantages and the element of surprise. It is the ability to see beyond the obvious and use subtle levers of influence. Let's move on to the third rule. We know that Sun Tzu considered this principle to be the supreme art of strategy and the quintessence of a general's wisdom. He stated, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Therefore, the best policy in war is to frustrate the enemy's plans. The next is to break his alliances, then to attack his army, and the worst is to besiege his fortresses." For Sun Tzu, the ideal victory is one that is achieved before direct conflict begins, before the first drop of blood is shed, through superior planning, preparation, diplomacy, psychological influence, or even simply by creating conditions in which the conflict itself becomes meaningless, or obviously a losing one for the enemy. This principle does not advocate avoidance of difficulties or passive inaction. On the contrary, it emphasizes the importance of preventive measures, strategic thinking, and the use of indirect methods of influence. Rather than engaging in costly, risky, and often destructive battles, the wise strategist seeks to undermine the enemy's will to resist, deprive him of resources, neutralize or break his alliances, demoralize him, or create a situation in which surrender or retreat becomes his most logical and even his only option. This requires a deep understanding of the situation, patience, foresight, and the ability to see several steps ahead, anticipating the consequences of each action. This principle includes several key tactics that can be applied not only in war, but also in life, such as disrupting the enemy's plans. This is the highest level. Instead of confronting the enemy head-on, you influence his strategy and plans before they are implemented. This could be spreading disinformation, poaching key specialists, changing the rules of the game in the market, or creating a situation where the opponent's plan becomes irrelevant or ineffective. In personal conflicts, it was the ability to prevent third parties from interfering or siding with the opponent. But only if the first two methods are impossible or have not yielded results, Sun Tzu advised engaging in combat, but even then, not head-on. It is about exploiting the weaknesses of the enemy, attacking in unexpected places, wearing down his forces, and not about a direct clash with his main force. This is still not a frontal battle, but rather a series of maneuvers designed to exhaust and demoralize the opponent. It is an extreme measure which should be resorted to only when all other options have been exhausted. Sun Tzu's principle has found its reflection in numerous historical events and strategies. For example, in the Roman Empire, the principle of divide and rule. The Romans often used this strategy to subjugate peoples. Instead of fighting everyone at once, they made alliances with some tribes against others, bribed leaders, and stirred up internal conflicts. As a result, when the tribes were weakened and disunited, Rome easily subjugated them, often without major battles. This was a perfect example of breaking alliances and ruining plans. The principle of win without fighting is the basis of many successful strategies in the modern world, both on a large scale and in everyday life. The best way to win without fighting is to create a product or service so strong and unique that it becomes extremely difficult or pointless for competitors to try to compete with you. Google dominates search not because it beat all competitors in a direct battle, but because it created a product that was so effective and convenient that it became a standard. Similarly, Microsoft once achieved dominance in the operating system market. But if you are an expert in a rare or highly sought-after field, you become indispensable. Employers will seek you out rather than you seeking them out. It is a win without a fight for the job, because you already have what it takes and there is little competition for you. And if you are known as a reliable, effective, and personable professional, you will be approached with offers. A wide circle of useful contacts allows you to learn about opportunities, find mentors, and even avoid potential conflicts at work, since people will treat you with greater respect. I suggest you find out how can you apply the principle of win without fighting in your daily life. For major life decisions or projects, think through several possible scenarios. What problems might arise? How can they be prevented or minimized? The sooner you anticipate potential conflict, the better your chances of avoiding it. Assess potential risks and develop strategies to mitigate them before they occur. Of course, actively develop your circle of professional and personal contacts. The more allies and like-minded people you have, the less likely you are to have to solve problems alone or enter into direct conflict. Look for opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation in your field, instead of always competing. Become an expert in your field. This will make you valuable and in demand, reducing the need to fight for position. And constantly look for ways to improve your products, services, or skills. Be the first at something to gain an advantage. Now clear that winning without fighting is a call to intellectual superiority and wisdom. It is the understanding that true strength lies not in the ability to crush an opponent in a direct confrontation, but in the ability to create conditions in which conflict becomes unnecessary. It is a strategy for those who value efficiency, conservation of resources, and peaceful resolution of problems. Sun Tzu, that great master of strategy, never tired of repeating, "Speed is the essence of war. Take advantage of what the enemy does not expect, and attack where he is not ready." And this is precisely his fourth rule. In his teaching, speed did not simply mean the rapid movement of troops or a lightning attack. It was a much broader concept, embracing promptness in decision-making, agility in adapting to changing conditions, the ability to seize a fleeting moment that opens up only for a short time, and the ability to maintain the initiative. Delay, on the other hand, has always been considered the enemy of strategy, capable of costing a great deal by giving the adversary time to prepare, recover, or deprive you of a unique opportunity. This principle is especially relevant in our 21st century, in a world where information spreads instantly and market and social conditions can change in a matter of days. For Sun Tzu, speed was a strategic advantage, like an unexpected lightning strike. It allowed one to catch oneself by surprise, avoid exhaustion of resources in long and grueling campaigns, and retain the initiative. Prolonging a war, in his view, always exhausts forces, undermines the morale of both one's own troops and allies, and increases the risk of unpredictable turns of events. Applying this to our modern life, we can say that excessive slowness, long reflections without moving to action, and constant postponement of decisions can lead to missed opportunities, loss of competitiveness, stagnation, and ultimately, defeat. Sun Tzu's speed principle is based on several fundamental truths, one of which was the surprise effect, since a swift action deprives the enemy of time to react and prepare. When your actions are fast and unpredictable, your opponent is disoriented, his plans are ruined, and he is forced to react rather than act on his own initiative. Also, long-term operations always drain resources, financial, human, time, emotional. Fast and decisive action allows you to achieve your goal with less cost. Sun Tzu said that there is no country that would benefit from a protracted war. This fully applies to any project or conflict in our lives, and the one who acts quickly is the first to seize the initiative, forcing others to adapt. This gives you control over the situation and allows you to dictate your terms. In the world, there are constantly windows of opportunity, short periods of time when conditions are most favorable for achieving a goal. These windows quickly close. Those who hesitate inevitably miss them. And of course, speed demonstrates determination and confidence, which can demoralize the enemy and strengthen the spirit of your troops. I want to say that many commanders and leaders successfully used the principle of speed. For example, we can recall the Blitzkrieg in World War II. The combination of a rapid advance of tank columns, air support, and bypassing fortified positions allowed the Germans to quickly break through enemy defenses, encircle large troop groups, and achieve victory in a matter of weeks, as was the case in France. The goal was not to give the enemy time to regroup and resist. The principle of speed is evident in many aspects of our modern life, where time has become one of the most valuable resources and a competitive advantage. The MVP concept is the basis of the modern startup world. Instead of spending years developing the perfect product, companies create a minimum viable product with basic functionality and quickly bring it to market. This allows them to quickly get feedback from users, test hypotheses, and quickly make adjustments, saving time and resources. For example, Airbnb started as a service for renting out mattresses on the floor for conference participants, and not as a full-fledged hotel chain, which allowed them to quickly test demand. In software development and project management, agile methodologies emphasize rapid iteration, short development cycles, and continuous adaptation to change. This allows companies to quickly respond to market changes and customer needs, without getting stuck in long, rigid plans. Everyone knows that in relationships, it is important to be prompt in showing attention, care, or resolving any misunderstandings that arise. If you notice that your loved one is sad or upset about something, do not put off the conversation for later. Quick support now will be much more valuable, but sometimes there is a brief moment when you can establish contact, apologize, express feelings, or propose. Missing the moment can lead to a breakup or cooling of the relationship. How to implement the principle of speed in your life without sacrificing quality and thoughtfulness. I will say this: in conditions of incomplete information, it is sometimes better to make a quick but adequate decision than to spend a long time looking for the ideal one, but miss the moment or fall behind. Sun Tzu said that victory does not always go to the best army, but always to the most determined. If you can't decide, set yourself a strict deadline for making a decision, after which you will simply start acting. Practice making small decisions quickly, without delay. The more you do this, the easier it will be to make larger ones. In uncertain times, sometimes you need to trust your gut feeling based on your experience and knowledge, rather than endless analysis. Turn off unnecessary notifications on your phone and computer so as not to interrupt your workflow. Set aside time and space where you will not be distracted so that you can focus on the task at hand. Accept that not all quick decisions will be perfect. The key is to learn from mistakes quickly and adjust course. And finally, use windows of opportunity. Be alert to moments when unique opportunities open up, such as a new job opening, an interesting business proposal, a chance to meet an important person. Act quickly before the window closes. Indeed, speed is the essence of war, is not a call for mindless haste or rash actions. It is a call for effective use of time, decisiveness, agility, and the ability to seize the initiative. In a world where information and opportunities are constantly changing, the ability to act quickly, accurately, and anticipate the next steps is becoming one of the key factors for success and competitiveness, both on a personal and professional level. And the fifth rule was the phrase of Sun Tzu: an army, like water, has no permanent form. The victorious one changes with the enemy. Therefore, he who knows how to change and adapt in accordance with the enemy and wins, he is divine. This principle speaks of the incredible importance of flexibility, adaptability, and the ability to transform. Water, by its nature, takes the form of any vessel into which it is poured. It goes around obstacles. Rather than breaking through them, it always seeks the path of least resistance, but at the same time is able to sharpen stone and overcome any obstacles with its unswerving strength. For Sun Tzu, being like water means being unpredictable, fluid, and always finding the best path to a goal, even if it requires a complete change of tactics. This principle is opposed to rigidity, dogmatism, and an unwillingness to change. In a world where everything is constantly in motion, fixed plans and inflexible approaches are doomed to failure. True strength lies not in being unwavering, but in the ability to change with the environment, using its dynamics to your advantage. But you may ask, why is adaptability so critical? I would answer that we live in a VUCA world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Old methods stop working, new technologies emerge, and markets transform. Failure to adapt means falling behind. And like water that always finds its way down, around mountains and obstacles, an adaptive person will always find a way to reach their goal, even if the initial path is blocked. It also helps to reduce stress because resistance to change always causes stress and frustration. Acceptance and adaptation to them make it easier to bear difficulties and maintain emotional balance. This water-like adaptability principle is the foundation for survival and prosperity in any dynamic environment. Companies that failed to adapt were left behind. They were not like water, unable to change their shape in response to market changes. Those that continually reinvent themselves, change their operating models, and diversify their products, like Amazon, which started out selling books and became a giant in e-commerce, cloud computing, and entertainment, are thriving. That's a manifestation of aquatic adaptability, and when the initial idea doesn't take off, successful startups are ready to change direction abruptly. Pivot to find a working business model. For example, Slack started as an online gaming company and became one of the most popular corporate messengers. But do not forget that the labor market requires constant retraining and mastering of new skills. A specialist who is an expert in one field today may be unclaimed tomorrow if he is not ready to learn and adapt to new requirements. The ability to change career paths, master related professions, or even radically change the field of activity in response to changes in the economy or personal interests is the key to flexibility. Adaptability also means a willingness to compromise. The ability to listen to your partner, change with him or her, and accept his or her new traits or stages of life. Relationships in which partners are not ready to change and adapt to each other often reach a dead end. It is very important to be able to resolve conflicts, avoiding rigid positions, and find solutions that take into account the interests of both parties, like water that flows around a stone instead of trying to break it. But how can we develop the quality of being like water in our everyday life? Firstly, never stop learning. Read, take courses, listen to podcasts. Be curious and open to new knowledge and ideas. This allows you to stay abreast of changes and quickly adapt. Challenge your beliefs. Ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? This develops critical thinking and mental flexibility. Secondly, meditation and mindfulness help us to be in the moment. Accept uncertainty and develop the ability to observe change without overreacting emotionally. Understand that the world is inherently unpredictable. Instead of resisting it, learn to embrace uncertainty as a part of life. This reduces stress and allows you to be more flexible. Also, be sure to experiment and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Give up the desire for perfection the first time. Try new approaches, test ideas. Don't be afraid that something will go wrong. Mistakes are not failures, but valuable experience and an opportunity to adapt. Implement the fail fast principle. It is better to quickly realize that something is not working and change course than to hold on to an ineffective plan for a long time. It is not about spinelessness, but about the wise strength that bypasses obstacles to achieve your goals. And we have reached the last rule for today, which is the principle of goal and flexibility. While Sun Tzu spoke of the incredible importance of adaptability and fluidity, he also emphasized the need to have a clear, well-defined goal. His teachings never advocated aimless movement or chaotic action. On the contrary, he said, victory is possible only when the troops are focused on one goal. However, this goal, like a lighthouse at sea, should not degenerate into a dogma that blinds you to changing circumstances and new opportunities. True wisdom lies in maintaining unwavering clarity of purpose while being as flexible as possible in the choice of ways and means to achieve it. A plan is just a tool. A goal is a destination. If an initial road is blocked, a wise strategist looks for a detour rather than standing still and stubbornly trying to break through the wall. This principle reflects the perfect balance between vision and pragmatism. Without a clear goal, you will wander, wasting your energy. But without a willingness to change your approach, you may find yourself stuck in a dead end, ignoring new opportunities or looming threats. In a world that changes at breakneck speed, it is often necessary to abandon initial strategies when they no longer work, but you must not lose sight of where you are going. The importance of balance between the goal and the plan is very great because it gives direction, motivates, and allows you to measure progress. Without a goal, there is no point in actions. Also, the plan is like a living organism. It must be flexible, ready for modifications, removing non-working parts and adding new, more effective ones. A rigid plan is a weakness, and of course, stubbornly following an outdated or non-working plan leads to frustration, loss of resources, and burnout. The ability to change the plan allows you to save energy and move forward. This balance between determination and flexibility is critical in today's world. In business, companies constantly set long-term strategic goals, such as becoming a market leader or increasing profit share, but at the same time actively use pivot strategies. A classic example is YouTube, which was originally a dating service, but its creators quickly adapted the idea, realizing the huge potential of video hosting. Their goal, creating a platform for sharing content, remained, but the plan changed radically. Companies may have a goal to create an innovative product, but during the development process, based on user feedback or changes in the market, they can significantly change its features or even the concept. It is very important to have a long-term career vision, who you want to become, what skills to master. However, the paths to achieving this goal can be completely different. Perhaps you plan to move up the corporate ladder, but an opportunity for your own business opened up, or a new, more promising specialization appeared that you did not know about before. In strong relationships, there are often common long-term goals: starting a family, a joint future, traveling. But life is full of surprises. Plans change due to work, moving, or personal circumstances. And the ability to jointly adjust plans, compromise, and look for new ways to achieve common goals without losing contact between partners is a manifestation of this principle. The goal remains, the methods for achieving it change. But how can you effectively combine determination and flexibility in your life? First of all, be crystal clear about what you want to achieve. Write down your goal, visualize it. This is your guiding light that will help you stay on track. Your first plan is just a suggestion on how to achieve your goal. It should be ready to be tested, modified, and even completely replaced. At least once a month or more often, depending on the speed of change in your area, evaluate how effective your current plan is and whether it corresponds to your goal and current circumstances. Ask yourself, is this working? Is there anything new? The principle of keep the goal in mind but be prepared to change the plan is a lesson in strategic adaptation. It is the understanding that true success is achieved not by blindly following a predetermined path, but by learning to use purpose as a driving force while remaining flexible enough to maneuver in the ever-changing landscape of life. Taken together, these principles of Sun Tzu offer more than just a set of rules, but an entire philosophy of strategic thinking. They teach us to see the big picture, anticipate the moves of the enemy or challenges, use our resources effectively, and remain flexible in the face of change. Whether you are seeking career success, improved personal relationships, or simply a more meaningful and productive life, Sun Tzu's wisdom offers invaluable lessons. By applying this ancient knowledge today, you are not simply following old ideas, you are arming yourself with universal tools for navigating a complex and dynamic world. Remember the words of Sun Tzu: "Every battle is won before it is fought." Let these words inspire you to build your own life more consciously and strategically, where every victory begins with a wise plan and deep understanding. Finally, I want to say that by applying this ancient knowledge today, you are not simply following old ideas, you are arming yourself with universal tools for navigating a complex and dynamic world. Remember the words of Sun Tzu: "Every battle is won before it is fought." Let these words inspire you to build your own life more consciously and strategically, where every victory begins with a wise plan and deep understanding.